Yo, what's good, y'all, man? Hope y'all doing well. So in this video, I'm gonna show y'all how to make a beat for Travis Scott and Don Toliver. The type of sound I'm going for is that ambient, dark type of vibe, like Birds in the Trap, and possibly something that might be on his new album, Utopia. Per usual, I made this beat from scratch. I think I've said plenty, so with all that out of the way, let's just hop right into the sample. The tempo that I started with was 133 beats per minute. I think originally I had this at like 110 or something like that. I just ended up changing it because I felt like the sample sounded a little too slow. So starting off for the first melody sound, I went into the Echoes Bank in Analog Lab and I got this static evolving keys preset. I opened up the MIDI and put in this pretty repetitive keys pattern. As y'all can probably tell, it's just the first measure just repeated over and over again. For this, I was just using the G minor triad. So I think the original key of this was in G minor. And I just paired this with these two intervals in between them and just use that kind of repetitive sort of pattern and put together the full 8-bar measure. And that sounds kind of weird just by itself, but I ended up putting a few effects on it, so it changes the sound by quite a bit. So the first effect I put on it was Portal on the Twisted Circles preset from the Grain Synthesis Bank. And then I put on Halftime on the 1/4 loop and the 1.5 mode settings. And then I went to Shaperbox and I got the Eat Your Veggies preset. For the mix level, I set it to about 20%. So with all the effects, this is what the melody now sounds like. So once I had that MIDI done, I went to the mixer track, armed it, and then hit Alt-R to render it out. Once I had the rendered out audio clip, I put it into the arrangement here. I set the mode to stretch and pitch it down by 600 cents. And at this point, I didn't really know what the key of the sample was just because of the halftime setting that I ended up putting it on. I kind of figured it out using the next sound. So after I had my first melody rendered out, I opened up this bass sound or texture that I got from the Producer Grind Experiment Club pack. And using this, I just kind of figured out which note was which, and I eventually figured out that the key of this sample with the pitch and everything was G sharp minor, and then I just ended up putting in this bass line. I forgot to mention I put one more effect on the rendered out version of the first melody, which was this bandpass EQ. So after adding the bass, I then put in this flute shot, and using this, I kind of used the same principle from the first melody where I just took the root note and then just kind of built these triads using like the first, fifth, and sixth note of the scale, and then just threw in a few accent notes here and there to just switch it up. So before putting any effects on it, it sounds like this. And then I threw on a couple effects, the first being this bandpass to kind of isolate those mids. And then I went into Portal and put on the game preset from Max Shooter's Waves Crate 2. So with the effects, the flutes now sound like this. So before putting any accents or anything on it, this is what the sample is starting to sound like. So as you can see in the playlist, I grabbed a couple accent sounds. I think both of these come from Max Shooter's Soundscape kit. So the first one being this one. I ended up pitching it up by 700 cents and I cloned it and got another version of it and I pitched it down by 500 cents. So pretty much they're just octaves of each other. The second one over here just being the lower of the two octaves. And I placed these on the first beat of the 4th and 8th measures. And then after that, I added this accent sound. And I pitched that one up by 800 cents. And I put the pitched up version first. And then I copied it over and cloned it, similar to the last one. And then pitched this one up by another octave. So once I did that, I rendered each of these sounds out as audio clips and imported them into a new arrangement. You just go up to the word arrangement here, click on it, and then hit add one. So once I did that, I arranged all the stems, and then I also added this Perc Loop here. I also pitched each of the stems down by 300 cents, so the key of the sample is now in F minor. So once I had everything put together, I arranged the loop and rendered it out as an audio clip. Alright, so for these drums, I tried to keep them fairly simple in terms of like the number of sounds that I had. I ended up just using like 6. So I have a clap, hi-hat, a couple 808s, a snare, and an open hat. So starting off with a clap, similar to most trap beats, I just have the clap hitting on the 3rd beat of every measure, and it's using this clap sound. For the hi-hat, I tried to make this a little bit intricate, but also kind of play around with the velocities quite a bit to add some bounce to it, and I'm using this hi-hat sample. For the most part for the bounce, you can see that I was like playing a lot with the velocities, and I also added a little bit of space compared to like the normal 2-step. For all the rolls, I think I'm using the 1/6 beat snap to grid and the 1/2 step snap to grid. So after putting in the hi-hat and the clap, I put in the snare sound. I just have a fairly typical snare pattern. I just used the normal line snap to grid and just put in some snares where I thought they sounded good. For my next drum sound, I added this open hat. And then for my last couple drum sounds, I put in my 808s. The first one is using this spin sounding 808. And with this one, I was pretty much just following the bass line from the loop and just adding a couple of different hits here and there to make it sound somewhat different. And lastly, I added this wheezy sounding 808. And with this, I just created like a alternate 808 just to switch it up. I felt like the first 808 pattern got a little bit repetitive, and also it's a lot more complicated than the first one, just because I wanted it to switch up not only in sound, but also just to make it sound a little more lively too. So that's gonna do it for this one. I hope y'all enjoyed it, found it pretty helpful. Let me know any thoughts, feelings, or any feedback you have for me in the comments. And that's gonna wrap it up, so I'll see you on the next one. Until then, take care. Peace.
Roll up,